Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns for day 19 of Around the League in 30 days as we stop in New York for one of the two teams in New York. First, the Mets. After a crazy offseason for them and their fans, we're here to preview their season. The boys are back, John, Will, and myself, Bobby, at the keys as we
Muck the
look
Fets.
at the 2025 Mets. Let's get right into that projected starting lineup for this season for the Mets. And you look at that top part of that lineup. My goodness, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo,
And everyone
Vientos,
else.
and everyone else. Jose Siri down there as well. You see the catcher position right now, and a little bit of a loop as Francisco Alvarez. That's 6 to 8 weeks, so he will be coming back in April or so. But for right now, they do have Torrens in there, and
And more
uh,
like May, but okay.
May 6 to 8 weeks, whatever.
They've
Starling
they've
Marte.
already said it's gonna be more like 8 weeks.
Okay, sorry, excuse me. Starling Marte, Pirates legend, there on the bench as well. He'll be platooning with Winker, and then looking at the rotation, which again looks a little barren from what we've seen last year. Senga comes back, hoping for a full season. David Peterson, starting pitcher Clay Holmes there as well. Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, but you're missing Mania, you're missing Montas, you're missing Christian Scott, all in that rotation. So. We'll see how that rotation pans out as the season goes on. Of course, when Montas and Mania come back, Genesis Cabrera gets added to the bullpen, and Edwin Diaz is, of course, with the best music out
Do
of
do do
any
do do
bullpen
do
arm in the
do.
league. Closing it out for the Mets once again, and that is the lineup for the Mets. Let's now get into the storylines. Starting with that pitching rotation, I want to talk about it. Did they do enough in the offseason? Because that pitching rotation and really, I don't want to say the ragtag group that they put together, but a lot of guys last year that really stepped up. Nye being one of those guys, and we know that apparently they develop pitchers pretty well, but they've had a lot of injuries already to start this year. So, Will, I mean, did they do enough? That offense looks great, but the pitching rotation, not so sure about.
Yeah, pitching was definitely the one kind of question mark that the Mets had after the offseason. I really thought they were going to bring in an ace even when they got Soto. It just seemed like the Mets, after their postseason success last year, were ready to finally drop the big bucks on all of the top arms out there hitting and pitching wise. But they seem to go with a lot of middle of the pack kind of pitchers with the hopes, I guess, that they can have some of them find their old forms. I'm mainly thinking about Montas and I guess Canning right now. Um, but I mean, the injuries obviously right now to Manaya and Montas really hurt that. Now they have depth. They definitely had like what 8 or 9 starting pitching options going into spring training. So McGill and Peterson, they're going to be thrown into the rotation. Peterson's an interesting one to me because he had a really good ERA last year, but he didn't really have a great whip, which almost makes it seem like that. I don't want to say he got lucky, but he at least got out of a lot of maybe like tough situations as he kept putting guys on. I do have faith that Senga will do very well again. He had a fantastic rookie season. And he at least got some time in the postseason last year. But this Mets rotation is really just maybe one top of the line guy and then a bunch of 4 and 5s, and then there's Clay Holmes because he's not a starter. He's a closer. And so I have no faith that he's going to be able to be effective for an entire season. So this Mets team better hope that Mania gets back quickly, especially, and hopefully Montas can come back and be at least a partially the person that he was before.
Yeah, Mania right now slated to be back in mid to late April, Montas in late May or June, so not great on that front. And of course, you lose a lot of guys as well, right? I mean, Severino goes, Quintana goes. So I
Can
think they're
I uh
Ty, can I caveat off of Will?
Yes, go
Well,
ahead.
can I follow up on that one? Uh, I'm
Drop
gonna
the numbers,
go.
boy.
I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm not dropping any numbers, not yet. Um, However, I will say that their pitching significantly improved in the second half compared to the first half. Their in the second half, their home runs dropped by 40. No, sorry.
Well, when you play less games in the second half, you tend to hit less home runs.
Well, 104 versus 61 as far as home runs given up. I think that's a good thing. Uh, as far as batting average against them, 221 in the second half and 236 in the first half. And then on base percentage, 303 in the second half and 323 in the first half. That in my opinion is good for their pitching. So I think that ragtag group really, proved something. However, I agree with Will. I think Clay Holmes, this is a horrible idea moving him from the bullpen to the starting rotation. I don't think this is the guy you want doing that. Uh, we've seen success in other aspects. This is will not be one of them. This guy didn't deserve to be an all-star last year, but he also I'm not even talking about I'm not even talking about
No,
former
you're
Philly,
right.
former Oriole.
I remember this whole argument when the All Star rosters were released. That was definitely like
Yeah, that was the
they
one
definitely picked
question
him
we
because he's a
had.
Yankee.
That was a why. But
Mhm.
in all seriousness, though, this is a bad idea for the Mets, and that's why I am going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to straight up say that the Mets are going to trade for one of the two guys we talked about yesterday, either Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez.
Interesting. I mean, look, I think they were really happy to get Mania back. But of course he gets hurt, and then Montas, like that's just really unfortunate. You sign a guy, and then he goes out. But I think, I mentioned that ragtag group, and that really wasn't, it sounds bad. It really wasn't meant for disrespect, but what I meant by that is
Yes, it was.
that pitching
Coming from the Phillies
stat,
fan,
that
it was.
that pitching coaching staff is able to apparently work wonders and really turn guys that, have had struggles elsewhere into great players. And that's why for like a guy like Montas, I was like, oh, this is a really good place for him to land. I mean, Severino again was great for them last year. Quintana was absolutely amazing. And I mean, Quintana's been around forever, but like it's not guys that you really expect to be aces or anything, but they really, I mean, that's a big reason why they made it to the playoffs and as far as they did in the playoffs was their pitching. So I do have faith in the fact that, they have maybe not the best looking rotation right now, but that they can get, enough out of guys like Canning and McGill to at least hold them over until, their other two guys come back. But,
Sure, they still need to make a move because otherwise they're going to fall behind
well,
the powerhouse of the
yeah.
Philadelphia Phillies and the out for revenge Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to say that
Say
you
that for me
can't
slowly.
you can't really take a step back in a division like the NL East. And I don't know if you were the person that said this, John, but one of us had mocked him going to the Mets Corbin Burns going to the Mets in the offseason.
I was.
Yeah, and
No,
I
that wasn't me.
and I was really surprised that they didn't land a guy like that because, I mean, if they have an offseason where they get Soto, Alonso back and have like an ace, like
I
we're
think their
talking about this
answer
team as
I think
oh
their answer was just throw money into our offense and outslug everyone. That's kind of what the Yankees did last year, when you think about it. So I think that's what the Mets wanted to do here.
It's not a
Um,
terrible idea. No, I
no, it's not
mean
a bad
it's
idea, but
when
I
in
don't
the
know how
postseason.
sustainable it is.
Well, I mean, it seems like in postseason, you can go with the saying that in the regular season, yes, good pitching beats good hitting. But in the postseason, good hitting seems to beat good pitching, at least when you're playing them over that 7 game series and you've seen them a few times. And or at least the way I mentioned it in the postseason, the trend, at least for like the last 10 years, is that the World Series winner finished in the top 3 in their league in runs scored that season. So there is definitely some type of correlation between offense and winning World Series, and then hoping that your pitching is what steps up and not the other way around. So if a team is thinking they're on the verge of being a true World Series contender, putting their money into their offense first over their pitching is not a bad idea.
No, but I think they still need help, and I think they need to go
No,
get somebody. Because Clay
right,
Holmes
but
is
they're
not the answer.
Looking at
Clay Holmes wanted to be a starter. He's gonna have probably a Jordan Hicks like season.
yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting. I would never
I
really
give him till
seeing this
May
coming.
till his ERA is over 7.
Jeez.
I think he'll get to the. I think it's just he'll hit the dog days of summer, and that's when not being used to starting is going to get to him.
Yeah, I think that's probably more likely. Let's look at that offense at this point. As you kind of alluded to, they get Soto and Alonso still a free agent, but they were able to reel him back in, at least for this season. And Soto, we know what kind of player he can be. I mean, when he is at his best, he's probably a top 3 player in the MLB. So for the Mets, how much of an X factor can he be? I mean, can he really, kind of do what pair him with a guy like Lindor and do what Soto and Judge did last year with the
Mhm.
Yankees and essentially carry a team? And I think they have a better supporting cast, the Mets do, than the Yankees do. So,
We
John, you
have the
go
Yankee
first.
and now the
Teacher, I have a
2024 Yankee
question.
analysis from John.
Teacher, I have a question. Are we
Okay.
talking about Juan Soto at the plate, or are we talking about
Oh
Juan
my
Soto in
God.
the field?
At the plate. I'm done with this conversation about him in the outfield. You take what you get at the plate and you don't give a shit. You can have him not out there. Just have two outfielders. It doesn't matter. He'll make up for it.
I agree. I'm saying the best
I
thing that they can do, and is what they did, which was last season they had JD Martinez as their DH. Make Soto your DH. Don't put him in the field at all. Don't let him touch it. Say,
As a
throw
Phillies
out
fan,
your
I want him
glove.
in the field.
Say, throw your glove away. We're not using it.
No,
Get it out of here. You know what?
throw
You
the
know what? The heck? You don't need it. Get it out. You don't need
throw
it.
the glove
Get rid of
away,
it.
play the outfield, and you'll do great when the
but
Phillies
I,
come to
I
town.
Get
I'm
rid of the
telling
That's what
you,
I'm
hat. Get
hearing.
rid of the glove. You don't need the sunglasses. You're gonna be hitting. Pick up a bat and start swinging, bitch. Because listen, you're not touching the outfield with your feet. All right. If
I
this guy is only hitting,
Floating?
this guy, this guy is going to be such an X factor. It's not even ridiculous. He's not only going to help out Lindor ahead of him, but he's going to help out Alonso in front of him, or sorry, behind him. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Anyway,
that's
point is,
okay.
he is going to help out this lineup so much. In the field, he's a liability. Okay.
It don't matter though. I think I've
Oh, we're
already
talking
said
about the
this.
offense.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm ending with this because I hate this conversation. It drives me nuts.
That's fine. I'll go into
But,
something else.
but I do want to say I don't think it matters because they have the best defensive center fielder in the league, and it'll make up
No, it's
for it.
Michael Harris. Sorry.
It's not. It's Jose Siri. That guy can't hit water if he fell out of a boat at the plate, but he's a damn good fielder. But I mean, like, I look at Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and I think that might be up there. I know you had the Dodgers, and I don't think anybody tops the Dodgers, but that's probably the second best top 3 in the
All
league.
about what Alonso you get.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a question nowadays. I mean, you saw teams weren't necessarily jumping on Alonso in the offseason. His OPS numbers have been going down over the last few seasons. And for the first time in his career, it dipped under 800. And this year, so really the big thing for the Mets is Soto going to be an X factor? Yes. And like you said, he and Lindor at the top of the order could very well just lead the team on their own to a World Series. I mean, look at what the Yankees did last year. But the biggest factors to how good of an offense the Mets lineup is going to be between Alonso, Nimmo, and Vientos, because teams are going to choose to pitch around Soto a fair amount of the time. Not every time, because if you have a stretch where Alonso's hot or whatever, They may just say, we'll take our chances and see what happens, or at least try to play with the corners and see if Soto chases, which he doesn't. But I
Yeah.
mean, regardless, Soto's going to get a 400 plus on base percentage. That's just what he does because of all the walks he does and hitting somewhere in the upper 290s or low 300s. And so, therefore, if teams are going to pitch around Soto, it's going to be up to the people behind him to be clutch. And so that's where there's a lot of upside, but there's also some concern. Alonso, like I said, has shown some dip in his power numbers. He'll still hit 30 home runs in the season, regardless of what his average in OPS is. Brandon Nimmo kind of had a bizarre season. He hit 20 home runs again for the second. Plus, Yunron, he did hit 90 RBI, so it seems like he's at least maybe trying to go towards that type of be more of a power hitter. But his numbers were kind of skewed, at least average wise last year. He only batted 224 and he had a 190 average in the second half, and his OPS was under 600. Now the last time in his career where something like that happened, where he batted in the 220s, he rebounded the next season. But if he's going to be more of a power hitter, at least that's his approach in the future, then you start to wonder maybe he is turning into like that 230 40s guy and is kind of being molded into the type of player that is now the norm for baseball and less of the on base higher average guy that he was before. And then Vientos had a fantastic, technically it was his sophomore season, but really his first full stint in the majors. And he absolutely proved himself in the postseason. Teams will most likely adjust. So then the question just for him is, will he be able to adjust to the changes? There's a whole lot of upside if a lot of those things click. There's still some questions about whether everything will truly be like that clicking in that sense. But I mean, the Mets offense is going to be very potent in that top five in the order, and they'll probably be within the top five in the National League and a bunch of the major categories by the end of the season.
I think the loss of Alvarez is huge, but like again, I look at the roster that they've put together on offense, and I think he has more protection in there outside of like I'm not talking like if he had Judge behind him, that's one thing, but I'm like the rest of the supporting cast, I think kind of gives him more protection because it's like, all right, if you bat around him, then you get Alonso, and what do you get from Alonso? Okay, then you got Nimmo, who's like Vientos. Like I think their supporting cast is just a little bit better.
Can I throw a hypothetical in there, and I want to know your guys' thoughts here.
Mm,
So we saw Soto bat second for the Yankees. We saw him
Mhm.
right now projected, I believe, projected to bat second for the Mets.
yeah.
Yeah. Here's my thought. Because Alonso's power numbers are dipping. And it's interesting, Will, that you bring that up because I didn't notice that at all until you brought it up. He is averaging more hits and more doubles than he has any time in the past, and his home run numbers are went from 46 to 34. That's not very good in terms of your power numbers. And he's going into what is year 30 season. So, and I'm talking about his age. So here's my question: do you bat Alonso second, and with the thought of okay, worst come to worst, best case scenario, and worst come to worst, uh, Lindor gets on, he gets a single, Alonso hits a single, not necessarily a home run, and knocks Lindor over to third, and now you have Soto to bring them both in. Is that the best case scenario?
No.
What do you guys think about that?
No,
Here's the thing.
Soto's on base is still too
I'm
good.
okay if Alonso does not become as a power. Like, he doesn't, to me, have to be the big 40 home run guy. His role will be, if he's behind Soto, is being clutch. So obviously having his OPS over 800, I think, is very important to the type of player he is. What's more important this season is he bats probably 250, 260, hits 30 home runs, but gets like 100, 110 RBIs. That's what you want. If it's a matter of Lindor singles, steal second, Soto walks, or whatever, and then Alonso can get a single to knock it one of them in, fantastic. If he's hitting more doubles instead of home runs because whatever for whatever reason, but Soto scores on half of those doubles from first, then that's what's important in the end, is knocking in the runs and being productive. But also quickly just going back to something you said, Tyler, pertaining to Soto and protection he has in the Mets lineup versus the Yankees. I mean, there's more pieces, I think, in the Mets lineup than there were in the Yankees because the Yankees just had Judge. But I find Soto's protection in his lineup with the Mets very comparable to what it was when he was on the Padres. And as a Padre, he only batted 265, but he did have a 400 on base percentage. So I do think that's something to consider.
Yeah, it's tough because is it like, all right, does Judge trump everything
Yes.
that I say about the supporting cast? And it probably does, because if you have the best power hitter in baseball, it's like, all right, well, like you're not going to get any better protection than that ahead of you. It's just like the Mets have more of a well-rounded lineup than the Yankees did last year. That was kind of my
No,
point.
I agree. I do. I think that the Mets in general have even hurt right now. I think the Mets have a more well-rounded lineup that the Yankees had last year, but there is a lot of factor in how it's constructed and who is behind Soto. And so I do
Yeah.
think that while the Mets have the better constructed lineup, Soto had so much better protection on the Yankees.
Let's move
Well, I definitely
into
think Judge adds to that, and I think that when you have the Judge behind you, you it really is a big oh shit, I got to pitch to this guy because I got that guy.
yeah, and well, again, we'll see. Maybe Alonso provides at least a little bit of that. But it ain't going to be anything to what Judge has to offer. Let's
I don't
move
think it
on
needs to
to
be.
the bullpen. They pry AJ Minter away from division rival Atlanta Braves. They lose Maton and Ottavino, though, in the process. But Will, I think the big question, not the big question, what is always going to drive this bullpen is their big man, number 39 in the back. So, I mean, what do you make of the signing of Minter? I do think it's a good signing, a nice lefty in the bullpen, but yeah, what do you make of their bullpen?
I don't think their bullpen has changed that much from what it's been in recent years. Yes, I like the Minter signing. He might not quite be ready for opening day, but he'll be shortly after. But I think bringing in Minter and taking away Ottavino and Maton fairly closely balances what you lost and what you gain. The bullpen, this is going to be completely driven by how successful Diaz has been, and that's been the case since 2022. When he's played well, the bullpen's been one of the best, or up there, I should say, at least top third in baseball. When he hasn't played or pitched as great, then they tend to be middle of the pack or bottom third. And going back to 2022, Diaz had a 1.32 ERA. Bullpen that year finished top 10 in baseball in ERA. 2023, he did not play. Bullpen finished 22nd in baseball with a 4.45 ERA. And last year, he had a 3.52 ERA. Not too bad for an ERA, but not ideal for a closer. Bullpen ERA for the team was 4.03. They were 17th in MLB. So I think it's completely about how successful and the type of year you're going to get from Diaz, which it is very much a coin toss what you can get from him. All right, I'm now the host of this show because I don't hear
Lost your
Tyler.
mic. Lost your mic. Sorry.
We're unmuted. Sorry, I forgot I took a sip of water. That's my
As the
fault.
host of this show, John, what do you have to say about the Mets bullpen?
My bad. That's on me.
I think that's interesting that you say that, in all honesty, Will, in terms of that the bullpen lives and dies with Diaz. And I think that really, honestly, with what I'm looking at here with his ERA and then how incredible he was in 2022, what we talked about was their bullpen in 2022. He was gross in 2024, and I mean that in a bad way. So in terms of 2024, yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. This lives and dies with Diaz. The question is, are we going to get 2022 Diaz, or are we going to get 2024 Diaz? Keep in mind he is 31, so he is going towards the tail end of his prime. If you think about it in terms of baseball, closer to 35 than 30. But yeah,
He also was coming off of a year where he did not play at all in 2023.
this
So
is
there
also
was that
true.
a little bit in 24.
This
I mean,
is true.
I think I can see anything. I'm just going to go on the side of I think he's going to have a bit of a chip on his shoulder and he'll be better. I don't think he's going to be the 2022 guy, but mid to upper 2 ZRA I think is more realistic.
I'm going to ask this first to the non-NL East biased
Fine.
person.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Who is this person speaking right now? This is a two-man podcast.
Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah, we dropped the host.
Yeah.
They've been waiting for that moment.
Tyler has been fired.
They've been
By
waiting for
his
that
own
moment.
microphone.
Even his mic got tired of hearing him talk.
John, you look at this division. It's got the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets, the Marlins, but no, the top three.
Ooh,
Whoa.
Who?
Hey, don't
The Nationals.
forget the Nationals.
I'm sorry, but looking at the top three, do you think the Mets are the favorite in the East?
That's an interesting question. And I say that for this reason. Offensively, absolutely. Pitching wise, you can make the debate, probably not. It is going to be a very interesting division to watch. You have, and I honestly, ironically, thinking about it, you could make the argument that the Braves are the sleeper pick out of those three to win the division, because you have the Phillies defending, you have the Mets just stacking with their big three, and and everything. But to me, I think the Mets pitching and their bullpen are two question marks that they're going to have to answer in a positive way. And if they don't, and they say they stay, good God, say they stay stagnant.
we're waiting.
And do nothing to help it, then I think they'll be in trouble, and I think they'll be a wild card team. I do not think that by any shadow of a doubt will they miss the playoffs. No, they're going to be in the playoffs. Do I think that they will win the division? Until I see otherwise, I would say it's the Phillies to lose. But I mean, that's also going off of history recently. So.
Well, Bakota doesn't like the Phillies,
I
and
never do. I'm used to that.
They have the Mets
Join the
finishing
club.
second behind Atlanta, and I know Atlanta has some interesting pieces when they're healthy. But do you think the Mets are still the favorites in the East? Do you think it's the Phillies still, or are the Braves kind of your favorite?
I'm starting to think the Mets are cursed because so think back to, I don't know if the injuries were as much of an issue this particular season I'm referring to, but back, what was it, 2023, when the Mets, or 22, whatever it was that year, that the Mets had Verlander and Scherzer, and it looked like they had this absolutely dominant team. And then they won 74 games and they traded a bunch of those guys away at the trade deadline. So it was like they bring in high profile talent and then things went south. They bring in Juan Soto. Injury city follows. Maybe. But in general, if I'm comparing them to the other teams in the division, right now the Phillies to me are still the favorites to win. I don't think the Phillies, going into a little bit probably with my Phillies episode stuff here, but I don't think the Phillies are going to change that much win total wise from last year. They might even be a win or two less. But when you put them side by side to me right now, the Phillies blow everyone away with the starting rotation in between those three. They have the slightly better bullpen, and their offense to me is, if they're not the best, they're probably second, and they're second to behind the Braves. I think the Mets right now, when you want to talk about just like a 1-2-3 punch, sure, you can put them up against probably almost anyone else. Lineup as a whole, especially what it looks like they're going to be dealing with for the first month or two of the season, if not more, gets very weak once you hit after the number 5 spot. And even depending on maybe like the type of Nemo you get at the time, it could even be after the top 4. once you start getting like Alvarez back, and maybe you see how the platoon's going with Winker and Marte, you might think differently. And McNeil's had some years where he's been a batting title champ, and other years where he doesn't know how to swing that giant thick bat that he chooses to swing.
Okay.
Have you seen it? It's just a log. But
Have you seen Alonso's big
all
bat?
right,
and
producer
his
Bobby,
log?
I'm going to continue talking. Go find an image of Jeff McNeil's bat and then put it up when you find it. But
We've lost all meaning of that word.
but
Have
anyway,
you seen McNeil's log? There's another shirt.
why can't I? Okay, the size of that log. Anyway,
That's the back of the shirt.
can I just leave now? I don't
my
like working with children.
I actually want to hear this.
But I don't see the Mets lineup after about the 4 or 5 spot as intimidating at all. Very strong top, very weak bottom half. And so there's a whole lot of upside when things are clicking up at the top. If you can kind of tame them, it's fairly even or uneven ground. Like it's you feel fairly confident what you can do. So, and with the pitching not necessarily feeling the most secure to me right now, I feel like the Mets, given the current injury situation, could even be looking more towards mid to upper 80s in win total.
Jeff McNeil with his oar. We'll see if he can step up this. There's just some things that I just don't expect, and that was one of them.
Yeah, like 2-year-olds running this damn podcast.
This is why Tyler's no longer the host. This is
Okay.
why you're the host.
Too bad I don't have the mute button anymore.
Oh, God.
I'd abuse it right now.
That is day 19 of Around the League in 30 days. For the Mets, it is going to be a fun division as always in the NL East. Really looking forward to those matchups between the Mets and the Phillies, the Mets and the Braves, and all those matchups with the Dodgers as well. It's going to be a fun year. But that is all for us at Big League Breakdowns. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at BL_breakdowns, Big League Breakdowns everywhere else. Make sure to like the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel as we move on in our 30 days around the league. Next time, we'll be talking about the Yanks. It's going to be a fun time. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Wear your seatbelt, New York.